Hello everyone, my name is Gabby and welcome back to another Hugtto Precure review. This time we're reviewing episode 3. With 2 Precure already, everything seems to be going good for about a day, until Hugtan starts crying non-stop. Harry shows them the Mirai pad, which the Precure can use to work out what Hugtan needs. They follow it around town until realizing what Hugtan wanted most was Hana's mother, who successfully calms her down and, after a monster attack, lets her and Harry stay at their place if needed. But the pad shows there's one more thing Hugtan wants, and it's right nearby. So, what did I like about this episode? Well, first of all, I'm actually kind of surprised just how much they put into this episode. When I saw the preview and the synopsis of this, I assumed this was going to be an episode that was basically just sort of showing off the Mirai pad and all of the different functionalities of the Mirai pad, because it's going to be merchandise that's coming out soon, and it basically wasn't going to do much in terms of plot or story, but that's actually not what happened. They took out the Mirai pad and sort of showed what it was, but they only really used like one functionality, which was basically just sort of a GPS of something that Hugtan needs, and it's probably not something that's going to be able to be used in the toy functionality. And in reality, the rest of this episode was really just dedicated to a lot of kind of like exposition and world building. We got to see a bit more of Homare, we got to see some stuff about the town that they live in, we got to see more of Hana's mother and sister, and we got to get exposition over where exactly Harry and Hugtan come from, what their goal is, and what the Precure's goal actually is. That is, if they get all the Mirai crystals, they can use that to then go and save their world and to get time moving in their world again. Instead of this episode being dedicated solely on just boring baby hijinks, instead they actually used it to try and sort of expand the world and answer some of the questions that I actually had been having over the first 2 episodes. Also, I really like how at the end of the day, the kind of big punchline was the thing that Hugtan actually really wanted and what she really needed was a proper actual mother, that is Hana's mother, and Hana's mother manages to get Hugtan back to sleep when nobody else could. Like, it's actually kind of realistic. If you're giving the role of raising a child to a talking mouse and 2 13-year-old girls, no, they don't necessarily have much experience in this. They don't necessarily know what to do. Being really enthusiastic isn't always a good substitute for actual experience. Plus, it's sort of tied into Hana's resolve during the monster fight, where she basically, she gets more resolve to try and be that cool, mature adult figure, because by having her mother do something that she wasn't able to do, it's just showing her how much more she has to learn. And the fact that they explained in a surprising amount of detail exactly what Hana's mother was doing and why it was helping Hugtan to calm down and get to sleep makes me think that in this season the writers legitimately are doing their research over how to take care of babies. And if so, that would be really cool. If they actually have research here, if some of the stuff they're doing are kind of based on real facts, it will kind of make it feel like less of a gimmick. So I'm excited to actually see that. Also, I just want to say that reunion between Hana and her mother after the giant monster attack, where they got separated because Hana had to leave to be a Precure, like, that was surprisingly emotional, and I was not expecting to feel so much within the 3rd episode after just a random incidental monster of the week thing. Perhaps it was almost a little bit too emotional and too realistic, because it makes me start thinking about like the implications of having the Precure fight for their lives. And, maybe these are fights that they could lose and actually get hurt or die in or something like that, because they make this kind of big deal out of the fact that the monster was attacking this tower and, if the Precure hadn't stopped them, they might have been killed or something really bad could happen. But I don't know, I'm probably thinking too deeply into this. As for what I didn't like about this episode, the concept of this episode, especially within the context of the series so far, almost feels like it's kind of a little bit forced and surprising. I mean, at the very end of this episode, there was a carry-on from last episode. We have Cure Ainge using her Mirai crystal to feed Hugtan, and you assume it sort of means they're kind of making progress and Hugtan will be happy or whatever. And then, we immediately cut to the next scene, and the next day, and suddenly Hugtan has gone back to crying again. And it's just kind of like, oh, so that sort of progress over getting a new member of the team didn't last very long at all. It doesn't help that Saaya has so immediately and so comfortably fit into the position of kind of background supporting cast member that I'm worried that she might be one of those characters who end up getting shafted throughout the series. It might not be the case, but you always wonder, especially considering there were only 2 main characters to talk about in this episode. So as for next episode, well, there is still 2 more Precure left to recruit, but Hana seems to have an idea for the 3rd Precure, and well, it's obviously not much of a surprise for anybody who it's going to be and when that's going to happen, but the fact is this episode seems like it's just going to be them learning more about Hamare and actually seeing if they can kind of properly recruit her. The fact that they seem to be staggering out Hamare's recruitment quite a bit makes me think that there's going to be a little bit more to her character than what we all initially expect. And she does seem like an interesting character in her own right, so I do want to see more of her. Also, I think this is going to be the episode where everybody who doesn't understand the difference between art and animation needs to just kind of stop and take a break and think about it, because this seems to be an episode done by one of those people who really like the kind of animation aspect and don't necessarily mind if there's lots of kind of frames that might technically be sort of off model. But hey, I mean, this is only episode 4 and I'm ready for Sakuga moments, definitely. I feel like I'm going to have to say, Precure is not a Sakuga show, but sometimes it does stuff like this and it really surprises you just how good it looks for what kind of show this actually is. So that was Hugtto Precure episode 3. In all honesty, I was not expecting anything out of this episode and it did quite a lot that honestly got me interested. We got to see a lot more about different aspects of the world. We had a complete episode about Hugtan not managing to be able to sleep that was honestly resolved in a quite satisfactory way. And even the fight scene, while obviously still kind of short and kind of lacking in a bit of creativity, kind of felt like it meant something for the characters. If maybe not as much Saaya, definitely for Hana and also definitely Homare. Basically, this episode wasn't really that skippable. Technically, you might be able to understand what's going on if you do skip it, but I do feel like there's enough in here and enough honestly of substance that it's actually worth watching. And that's not something you can always say for a random episode of Precure. So I think that was a success. One thing I've realized about doing weekly Precure reviews is that it sort of makes me a bit impatient for the next episode to come out. Because I mean, I spend all this time sort of thinking about the episode and then kind of speculating over the next episode, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to wait a week. Or at least a few days. And it's just especially when you have an episode where it's oh, this episode was fun, but also they're very clearly hyping up for things that are going to be happening in the next few episodes. And you're like, oh, so, this story arc is literally going to take about 3 weeks to complete, and I kind of want to know the outcome to it right now, but the story arc's going to take a while, so it kind of makes me a little impatient, but maybe that will also mean that, when the next episode comes out, I'm going to be more excited. I don't know. I've never tried to sort of break down Precure episodes week by week, so maybe this is going to make me actually start appreciating the episodes more and appreciating the seasons more. I mean, I hope so. That's kind of why I'm doing this in the first place. So this is Gabby signing out, and I'll see you all next week. Bye guys!